I'll let you lead.
What's up?
I'm stoked to be here.
So I am too. It's been a long time since we've had a proper chat. So
Too long.
it's usually over WhatsApp, but not like,
Well, also, I hold you in so much higher esteem now, which I thought was impossible. But after playing with your data app from 1993, dude, like, give me a break. That is just too good.
it was good. Okay, you want to know how I made that too? It was actually, I was on a podcast, and during that, I was like, you know, wouldn't it be funny actually if we made the 90s version of a BI app for the data? And so meanwhile, I was in the podcast, I just turned on cursor. I was like, take this data set, make Tableau in the 90s. And by the time 40 minutes, it was done. It's great. Just glad you liked it.
Really wondering like how specific you got. Did you have to say, hey, add these little pieces like pie charts and
Mhm.
all of
Yeah.
there's so many little Easter eggs in there. Did you have to say those or did it know you just gave it the vibe?
So you start with the vibe and then you kind of dig into it and you say, okay, I want to be able to export to Lotus 123, the old spreadsheet. And I also want Crystal reports, which was the old school reporting package you'd use back in the day. And then obviously the charts, if you were around back then, it was like one of these things where the charts are just horrific. And
They were-
so don't include any useful charts. Make
Yeah.
the 3D donut charts or a speedometer chart was the other
The
one.
speedometer. My ultimate favorite was the little ticker that was going across. Like, don't forget, like the password is 12345.
Well, that was something you saw back in the day too. That's how some apps were. You had the corporate feed, and it was
Yeah.
just so unhinged. Like we're having our team meeting, team break, or team activity on Friday night. I'll be sure and be there. It's optional, but
Yeah,
it will be
exactly.
noticed if you're not
Because
there.
it's exactly what I wanna be doing on a Friday night, is hanging out with my corporate buddies in the '90s.
Yes. Well, but you get to hang out with me instead. So
Nice segue.
yeah, how have you been?
Man, I was just telling you before we hit record, I've been great. I've been a little bit stressed because of this coding agents conference that we are putting on in, like, a week. I don't know if this will be out before or after the conference. It's on March 3rd, so
What is time? Yeah, it's on
exactly
March
that.
3rd, but that's coming up pretty soon.
Yeah.
I've never done a conference. You've done one or more before.
Mm.
Are you? I'm surprised you don't have PTSD from this.
Dude, every time I do one, I'm like, never again. I never am going to do another conference in my life. Why would I ever subject myself to that? And then I guess it's like women who go through childbirth, there's some hormone that gets
Yeah.
released and they forget how painful it is. And so they're ready to have another child. That's kind of like me. I just have,
It's supposed to be equated to that, yeah, because yeah, my wife's always like, "Let's have another kid." And it's like, "Nah, they're good."
I'm
But
glad I'm on this side.
conferences are also kind of like that, though. Like I'm imagining where, maybe I don't know what it is. Is it the? I guess why did you say to do this again?
It's just such a interesting time for me, one, with all of the tools and fun things that we can do now, like a la
Yeah,
to showcase data from the '90s and being able to do it so easily. I've got all of these opinions. I've been learning a ton about it, but my favorite way to learn is always to learn with other folks and talk to other people and hopefully get a few shortcuts and jump the line on like having to bang my head against the wall a lot. So that's one reason why. And then the other reason was just that it felt like we've been doing a lot of stuff around agents in general in the MLOps community, as everyone I think has been thinking about that. But this really coding agents, when you start playing with Claude Code or whatever, insert your favorite coding agent or ID or whatever, you realize, hey, I have just had this new superpower unlocked. It feels like. And so I don't like that might be a little overblown, but I've had a few wow moments to where I'm like, wow, an excuse for me, purely selfish reason for me to be able to hang out with the people that I want to hang out with is if I organize the party. right? I'm not cool enough to get invited to the parties on my own, but if I'm the organizer, then I can invite people who I think are leading this revolution.
That makes a lot of sense. And then you are the party, and so, with your favorite
Right.
friends and stuff, so yeah, and you're absolutely right, it feels I don't think what you said is overblown at all, like, I feel like what we have now is it feels like a superpower already, and I shudder to think what that superpower is gonna look like, next week even, because it feels like this changes on a weekly basis where you're like, "This is really cool," then all of a sudden something new comes out, new agent, or something like OpenClaw, which just sort of just took off virally on its own, and then all
Yep.
of a sudden you're in a completely different world, and next week is a new adventure, and that's just kinda how it's been for I would say, I'm curious when you felt like it changed. For me, I felt it changed around maybe this time last year. Claude Code, MCPs were getting popular, but then it felt like it felt like things were starting to move at a clip where before it was like, okay, chatbots are pretty cool, right? I mean, your old T-shirt, I hallucinate more than ChatGPT, like that
Right.
was kind of like the thinking then. But then something flipped, and I feel like especially around December of just last year, or even January of this year, something felt like the gas just got pressed even harder,
Yep.
and that's the exponential.
Well,
So,
it was really like you went from using the autocomplete
mhm,
to using just, "Okay, go do it for me." Went from, like, the tab mode to the agent mode, and then you're like, "Whoa, it's actually doing it. This is pretty wild," and you stopped reviewing as much code, or at least I did. I started doing, like, the new "looks good to me," which is just, enter whenever it pops up. "You want me to take root access of your whole computer?" "Sure, take it. I don't
yes,
care."
proceed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That is literally how I was like, "Let's see what happens. Let's try it." And it's also you stopped having to really break down the prompt as much, and
Mhm.
there's obviously, like, the better that you can give it context, the better the outcome, but you didn't have to do all these tricks anymore, like, now my prompt has to be 2 freaking pages long.
Right.
You just kinda said, "Go figure it out," and it would more or less get kind of far.
Yeah, because I think prompt engineering used to be the thing, right? And that was actually like a job title, I think it won for at least 1 month of, when it first got popular, but now I don't yeah, my prompts are pretty, they're pretty vague, but it still
Yeah,
works, which is kinda
yeah,
shocking, right? Like that
exactly.
crappy app I made, right? Like, give me, the worst version of 1990s Tableau that you can make with, the worst user experience possible, and it's like, "Not a problem, I got this." Right, so it was using Cursor and then, Opus 4.6 under the hood.
Mhm.
Or maybe 4.5, whichever. It doesn't matter, but it just cranked it out with very little prompting. Because back in the day, as you're right, it was like 2 pages of prompts and like maybe some tags as well to make sure
Yeah.
it's now
Yeah, you had
it's
to do all kinds of that's true, I totally forgot about that. You would have to really, like, be like, "Here's the user, here's the system prompt, here's the" back
yeah.
and forth, and I guess it's a little bit different of a use case, but it just got good, and you didn't have to the learning curve, I guess, changed. It's not as steep of a learning curve. It's just more that you now think about things differently because also you're able to think through, "What do I really want done here? What is the outcome? Alright, well, if you can put that into the prompt, you don't have to worry about this semantics of how you actually phrase it."
hmm Yeah, I mean, so you've been covering this from the beginning on your podcasts and the MLOps community, and I will say too, there was a time I felt like maybe it was a conference that you had a couple years ago in San Francisco, but it was sort of the height of chatbot mania, generative AI mania, and it was like, and I think that the commentary was, God, are we even cool anymore? Like ML ops,
Yeah.
or are we sort of just relegated to this freak show on the sidelines here? Still, I mean, well, it's true actually, but you're still around, obviously, and you've seen sort of the arc of this whole thing from day one. I'm guessing with your, the guests you have are all phenomenal and so forth. Like, um, what what's your impression of just, how things are gone, and I guess more importantly, where do you think things are heading?
So As far as where things have gone or how they've come, I don't think that enough people are talking about how there's still a lot of money being made with traditional ML. It's almost like been swept under the rug because there's the shiny new tool of agents now. But it went through all the phases, right? First it was it's LLMs and Gen AI, and then it's RAG and whatever you want to insert your favorite thing here, topic du jour. And agents and now coding agents are able to generate a whole lot of money. That's for sure for a select few companies. Like
That's insane.
fast takeoff right there. And, Cursor was for the moment in time, I think they were one of the fastest companies to hit 100 million in revenue. And so that is for sure. Like there's still a lot of money being made for these coding agents. Where it gets a little fuzzy in my mind is what kind of external facing agents have you seen generate a ton of cash? And
External facing, like, what do you mean?
so you as a user interacting with a app or a company or whatever, where are agents being used? I've seen two kind of key use cases. One being customer service, and that's where people feel like they're getting a lot of ROI. And then the other one is like voice agents. So actually, no, hold on. Now I just forgot the second one. But the customer service use case, let's maybe go down that path. I don't know if you edit this at all.
No, that's
But
fine. I usually don't, but it's more coherent that way.
great. And now I look, let it be known, I tend to lose my train of thought. It's just nicer in my podcast because I can edit around it and make myself seem succinct. But the customer service use case is fascinating because you have folks that sometimes they just can't get, like in the call centers, they can't hire enough people. And so what are you going to do there? Well, like if you can add voice agents to it, then you're potentially having some success. And so that's one. The other ones that I've seen though, I haven't necessarily felt like it is such an incredible experience for the user.
Hmm.
And I've talked a bit about this as how us as a user, we're used to dealing with the internet in these ways that are very lazy for our brains to interact with. So when you go on an app, you don't necessarily need to think that hard about what you want from the app. You're getting fed stuff. So if I go into Uber Eats as a perfect example, I'm getting thrown pictures at what I should be eating, right? And I just swipe and I hit on that. I don't have to think like, I want a cheeseburger that has jalapenos on it, or I just, boom, instantly open the app, get pictures, swipe around, click on it. Now, with like the chat bots or just agentic experiences, I don't think we've quite figured out the best way to have users interact with agents. Because if you take that same experience, I jump onto Uber Eats and you want me to now interact with an agent, the way that folks were doing it in the beginning is they would just put a search bar or like that magical bar there and say like, ask me anything. And you type in like, I'm hungry. And it's like, okay, great. They're going to show you a bunch of pictures. They just added an extra step to your whole process. Then I have to think about what the hell do I want to say in this box? Right.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of the quips I have with how we're dealing with the agents. I do think people are still getting maybe parts of the experience more agentified that can be abstracted away and maybe the user doesn't even realize it. So an example of that would be that me as a user, I'm using an app in a certain country and or sorry, let's take a different example. Let's stay on Uber Eats. The person who is the restaurant, they're putting a menu onto the Uber Eats. And instead of them having to really describe what's going on for each dish, they can talk about it a little bit and then boom, it just auto populates the different whatever ways to make it seem like it is a better dish, right?
Yeah.
So the description.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is we're constrained to the models in which we, or the modes in which we interact with apps and so forth, right? So Apple, recently announced that the rumor is they're going to be having new types of experiences. The rumor is like, an Apple Pin they'll wear around that'll have sort of an ambient microphone and camera that's maybe not made for photos, but will be enough to have
It's to get that context.
yeah, exactly. And so then, because I think you start unlocking the experience of agents when the agents have the context in which you're interacting with, say, an app, for example, right? Like Uber Eats, for example. Say I'm, blazed at like 1 in the morning or something. And I'm like, yo, what would be great right now? Probably it just pulls up. It's like Taco Bell would be great for you. You dork.
It knows,
Um, right. It just knows. That's, let me see
smells.
what's
It's like there's
open.
something dank in the air right now.
Yeah.
What is that? Our sensors aren't quite picking it up, but
Right.
we know that whenever we sense it, there's a correlation of Taco Bell. So we're just going to suggest Taco Bell to you.
Yeah, this pig wants this food at 1 in the morning. We'll, we'll send it over to Joe and Demetrios, and that's
Yeah.
so I think it's about unlocking that sort of that hidden layer right now. Like when I was a kid, I always imagined this. So I was on the internet like super early before even the web, and I always imagined like what would it be like if you had computing and a network experience where you could kind of go back to the 90s actually, and you didn't have to interact with the screen. Right, and one reason I like the Apple Watch is because I can leave my phone at home and go walk with it, and I feel like I can just enjoy my surroundings while still being connected in case somebody needs to get a hold of me, like my kids or something, but, just going for a walk and not feeling encumbered by staring at a screen the whole time, and I feel like we have a chance of going back to that world where the internet will be or, internet and AI and agents will be there when we need it, and it'll just disappear when we don't, and I think that would be quite a change right now because as you say the experience right now is you have to pick up this and then go through the phone and then drop it on the floor and crack the
Yeah.
screen and then like cool, I can't order anything anymore, and like it's a lot of friction.
Well, and also having to think about what you want much more than just double tapping or swiping about what you want. Like that is a lot of friction in my mind. Asking a user to type in what they're trying to get words together. You've seen how hard it's been for me the last 30 minutes while we're talking to actually make
Yeah,
words make sense. Now,
yeah, there's a hooked on phonics class. I was going to get a discount code to you after that'll be one of our sponsors.
yeah, wouldn't that be great? Like perfect segue to the Hooked on Phonics sponsorship,
Speaking of which, if you have trouble speaking,
like Demetrios does.
yeah, so back to your conference, right? So you're doing a conference, it's on coding agents. I think this will be interesting. I can't show up because it's around the time of my birthday. I've been trying to promote it and stuff, but like a couple of things like what's it like to do a conference? I've always wondered 'cause I'm about to
Mhm.
do one myself pretty
Yeah,
soon. And then the second question is, what's it like trying to do a conference on a topic that seems to be changing on like an hourly basis?
yeah. Ugh. That's what that is 100% wild, especially because the masses every hour or day, they're infatuated with a new thing that is just so cool. So, like when we set this up and when we locked in the speakers, there was no notion of OpenClaw
Right?
whatsoever. And then boom, that becomes the biggest thing in the world. It's like, oh well, shoot, missed that one. But whatever. I still think that as far as a conference goes, to the first question, like organizing them, there's just a lot of little things that you want to think about. I'm constantly thinking about the attendee experience and just how to make it different than a normal event that you would go to and how can you make it special.
So explain to the audience what a normal event would be like.
Just talks and food and expo hall, right? And I've heard folks there's the founders of Charity Water. Have you heard of that foundation? There I heard them talk about once because they are known for putting on great events to get people to pledge or donate to the foundation, right? And one of the things that one of the organizers said is that you want to really focus on the moment between the moments.
Mm,
And so everybody knows that there's going to be talks, and those are like the moments, the keynote talk. But what about the check in and registration? How can you make that magical? How can you make the walk from the check in to the actual auditorium hall? What can be magical there? Or how can you make the afternoon sessions feel different? Or after everything's finished, as far as talks go, what can you add to that? And so you want to be focusing on these like fine details. And when we did it 2 years ago, the one you came to, obviously you DJ'd, which was one of those moments that I was very excited about. But
thank you.
in the morning, we were having trouble with the line to register and get people in.
Yes, I remember. Yeah,
So at one point, I was like, oh man, this is not the best attendee experience. And I grabbed the ukulele and I just went out and hung out and sang with people out in the line
that's cool.
while they
Yeah.
were waiting. That was not planned. And that was not like thinking through it. Now I know from experience, okay, there might be a problem where we have line and it gets long. What can we do to make that a better experience? Can we offer people food or coffee while they're waiting in line? Things like that, just to make it feel like, wow, these folks are thinking about the fine details. So that's the greater thing. Now to the second
Yeah.
question of organizing something that's constantly changing, I think for me selfishly again, I'm just using it as an opportunity to learn a ton
Mm.
and get to because I want to go in there and I don't want to be completely like what's going on? What are we doing? And not be able to take advantage of having all these great resources in front of me. So things that we've been doing now, it spurred like different actions and activation energy in the community. So there's folks now in the community that every Friday they're organizing like lunch and learns about coding agents where we get together and we just share what we've seen working best when working with different coding agents. And then it also, we've been doing some reading groups on different coding agents and vibe coding in general. And I've been trying to just build as much as possible, which is cool. And then I create a few theses on what's going on. So, one thing that I do think, and I would love to get your take on, is software now is becoming very local first as opposed to when you built in the past. It was always, okay, I'm going to build this. And you probably 80-90% of the time were thinking about, let's take it to production and let's expose it and let's have lots of people consume this. But now you're like, okay, well, it's very bespoke software. And why would I ever need to productionize this? Because it's for me, for my workflow.
I think that's 100% correct. I mean, so I set a challenge to myself to automate or simplify something in my life every day using AI.
Wow. Nice.
And that's been an interesting exercise in itself. For one thing, for every task that I seem to simplify it, there's 10 more things that suddenly pop up. Because now it's sort of the question is, well, that's out of the way. I guess we should be working on some more stuff, right? So what Wes McKinney had a good blog post on this recently, where he talked about the Mythical Agent Month, actually, which is kind of a play on Frederick Brooks's the Mythical Man Month, which is throwing more people at a problem actually makes it go slower in projects. But and the notion was, and he hit this perfectly in the opening part of his article, which was, I'm not sure if you have this, but I do. You wake up, and the first thing I do is like, actually before that, I'll turn on my computer typically, have AI run some task, and then I'll go make coffee. Because I feel like that's if it's not burning those seconds between like initiation and getting coffee, then like what's the point of like life right now? And
You're,
so you feel
you're
like there's this
unoptimized.
constant, yeah, there's this constant like kind of I think just need to have the AI always doing something, right? So, so I feel like that's where I've changed, but I do feel absolutely 100%, like we were talking about before we hit this, like you have a teleprompter app, in Elgato, which is fantastic. I was subscribing to an app called Teleprompter, right? I think 60, $70 a year, fantastic tool. But I thought, you know, let's just see if we could build this. So I, fire up Cursor for anything that has a like a UX. I always fire up Cursor and just let the model run in the background or have Cloud Code in the terminal. But it's like, don't want to see it. Anyway, within about 5 minutes, I had a teleprompter.
Yeah.
I said, just make me a teleprompter app that I can use on my computer and on my iPad. And then took it a step further. I was like, okay, I need this other functionality. Let's reverse the text, right? You've probably done that before. And it's like, did that in like 1 minute. Gosh, what else can we do? Adjust scroll speed, everything else. Then you have basically the app that you're paying for. And that fits my needs. And every day it's just like that, developing software that I know I need. I don't think, so it's this issue where I when I talk to, and, software engineers, myself having been one too, but it's like, there's this notion of putting things in production.
Hmm.
And I think you're absolutely right, where the production is now an n equals 1 or maybe 2, but it's you or maybe somebody's using it, but it doesn't have to be this thing where, mass numbers of people use it,
Yeah, it
and
doesn't need to be
that's
built for scale.
different. Yeah, but local first is true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The thing that is so wild in the community, we've saved like 20 grand this year already because we got off of so many SaaS tools that were just at the end of the day, they're just charging us for being at scale, right? So the main
Mm,
culprit of that money that we saved, this was like the big one, was getting off of customer IO for our email list. Like we have
mm,
100,000 or more than 100,000 people on the email list. Customer IO was charging over $1,000 a month because they go by the size of the list and the amount of contacts that you have, right? And so then it's like, well, maybe we could do this ourselves. And boom, next thing you know, like, wow, we just saved 15 grand by getting off of customer IO. And then you start thinking, I wonder what else we don't need.
right.
And we're like, do we need Airtable? Maybe not. So there goes another $100 a month. And the only thing that I do still have that we're keeping, just because I'm worried that if I delete it, there's going to be a lot of stuff lost, but I can export it and then maybe create my own, is Notion.
Same, same.
I might end up, you know, going to create my own Notion or just using like Obsidian.
I
Obsidian's
think it's
open
still
source,
true.
right?
It is, yeah, yeah. I mean, so yeah, I like Notion just because it saves me a lot of time in terms of sounds like a Notion commercial. And if you have problems with your data, Notion is a great tool. Just kidding, but it is a great tool in the sense where I think it allows me to organize things in a way that would just be a lot harder, right? And then I can make web pages public and so forth. There's a lot of functionality. I only have a single seat price. Obviously, if you have more people, I could see this adding up. But I think the productivity gains from it. So I guess I got rid of Asana, which I was
Yeah.
using for projects, and I was like, well, I'm not using half the stuff. I'm just gonna migrate it all to Notion, and but then I actually built an Asana clone as well. I was
Nice.
just like, okay, so I can do all that too if I wanted, but I
Dude.
want to consolidate on tools. I want to spread more tools. You know what I mean? But yeah, so
Well, so I will say, like, Notion almost got me thinking about this more seriously because you know how now they're always trying to record your calls
hmm
when you get on calls? I was like, oh, well, let's see. I want to have that feature, especially if I can have all my calls in one place and then all my data and all my everything in one place. Might as well do it. When I hit upgrade, I've got 12 seats in Notion for the team. And they were like, great, that's going to be $16,000. I was just like, God, get out of here.
yeah, because they want to. Are you on the if you're on business or whatever, they want to charge you for yeah, it's
It's so ridiculous.
so yeah, I mean that could be a candidate for replacements. I do agree, and I've been thinking about that too. I guess yeah, I don't have the scale that you do. I'm just a guy, Demetrios,
Yeah.
who spends $240 a month or a year on Notion. So it's
On
like
Notion.
the time savings for me. It'd be like, I'm like, it's not even worth it. Like that's
Exactly.
so,
Those
but
that
at
like
scale,
trade-off that you're looking at is like, there's probably better things you could sink your teeth into. For me, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, do we really need Notion? Should we try and do something else? Like, there's a friend of mine was just telling me how he got off of Linear, and Linear
Oh,
is like
interesting.
the most advanced one there is out there, right? And he was just like, yeah, actually, the agents do better if you just give them uh no, I think he just migrated to just like markdown files, all markdown files, and then
Oh, I can see
created
that.
his own agents that did the things that Linear was doing.
Crazy.
Yeah. And so like not
This episode
needing
is not
Linear is
sponsored by Linear, by the way. So
what?
I said this podcast is not sponsored by Linear.
Yeah, because
But if you'd like to sponsor it, let me know.
we're encouraging people to get off of it. I don't think they would be super stoked on that one.
But yeah, you're just giving a story about a friend.
Yeah.
But no, I mean that's a wild thing though, and I think that's a thing. I mean, hopefully you're touching on this at your conference, but it's a discussion that I have a lot with friends right now, which is, if you're a SaaS company, for instance, like what is that moat that you have going forward? And that I think has a giant, giant question mark. The stock market is obviously freaking out about it. It sort of rebounded recently, but it's still the big question as well. If not now, then when? And the when being, well, a bunch of things. You know what I mean? So, and I was having this discussion actually with a friend of mine in Europe who, he works more with like kind of big enterprises, and he's like, well, but software's not going to eat away at the big enterprise systems. And I was like, well, yeah, but then you also have tool use,
Yeah.
right? So it could learn how to use these tools and they could probably replicate them, actually.
I've been thinking about this a lot, and it feels like there's a subcategory or there's different buckets that aren't going to get affected as much. And those buckets are like the long tail of non technical, smaller companies where the people on the team, like a landscaping company, and people that own the landscaping company aren't going to even think to themselves, we could like create our own software.
Which is
So,
crazy because they'd be the ones that benefit most from it.
yeah, exactly. So if they know, that's great. But
Yeah.
usually, I doubt the majority will realize the capabilities and the potential and the possibilities. So that's like one. There's a lot of different companies that will fall into that bucket. Just
Yeah.
like those long tail, small to medium sized businesses that aren't necessarily technically inclined, and they'll probably end up buying SaaS because it's made. Maybe there's a landscaping CRM that's built specifically for small to medium sized business landscaping companies. And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is like the gigantic corporations that are just playing defense and they can't afford to take any risk and use Bob's vibe coded Salesforce. Right? Like that's just, oh yeah, Bob,
Yeah.
you've created your own Salesforce and you think the whole company is now going to like jump on board with that? I don't see that happening for a long time.
That was kind of funny. Actually, I actually vibe coded a CRM during a podcast. It was called a Slop Force. Well, yeah, I mean, it would work for like you or me. I clicked around. I was like, it's actually pretty complete. It's pretty good. But yeah, none of us would use that for a big company. But it is interesting though. I do sort of wonder what happens to the big companies like in Germany where you are. There's a SAP or
Yeah.
SAP as us Yankees call it, and they're. I mean, people have tried to dethrone them for
Ages.
ages, and good luck.
Hmm.
But
Well, I saw something funny just the other day where there was two things that came up. One was if Claude Code coded 100% Claude co-work in 2 weeks, that's great. But then if you think you can extrapolate that out to everything, why did Anthropic just buy like 1,000 seats for Workday?
true, yeah.
There's still system of records still is pretty important and Claude Code hasn't quite hit it. And then on the other side of the coin, I saw somebody post a screenshot of one of Anthropic's open jobs, and it is a Salesforce integration specialist.
Saw that one for like NetSuite or something.
So you're like,
Yeah,
and that might be totally fake news. They could have easily spun that up.
yeah.
But if you're gonna believe it, then okay, Anthropic is buying Workforce and Salesforce, and so this is the company that is 110% in on creating their own stuff,
Mhm.
and they're still using those.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a very good point. So, yeah, I think it just kinda shows, like, how I mean, $14 billion though in revenue from basically 0 last year is insane. Like, that
A lot.
I can't even fathom that as a company, to go from like, "Hey, Demetrios, you wanna go start a company that writes code with AI?" And all of a sudden it's like $14 billion later, right? But that's, with that acceleration. So it was interesting in that respect where it's definitely, and it happened by accident apparently too, right?
Yeah.
The companies with Boris Charney like didn't think that would go anywhere. But I heard the same thing about ChatGPT, like that wasn't expected to go anywhere either. It was like this is like probably just a hobby thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, never mind. And so who knows, where it goes next if like OpenClaw just ends up being like this thing where just suddenly it's in every enterprise and but it's I think it's just I think all these examples just go to show how hard it is to predict the trajectory of stuff, but also I think your counterpoints are definitely true where it's like it also goes to show how hard it is to unseat if you have those advantages, right?
Yeah. You're too stuck in, right? Your claws are too deep into the corporations and the
So what does it
corporate
leave everybody else? Because you have the the apex predator companies out there that have the big claws and will just sink them into your enterprise and that's it. And then what happens to everybody else though if you don't have that kind of you know
That's the big question. That's why I feel like that in between land of not the long tail and not the gigantic enterprise, are they going to like the ones like myself, and there's probably a ton others that are out there, small and medium sized businesses that are more technically inclined. That's where you're going to start seeing the market hollow out, in my opinion, because we do understand that, yeah, actually I could save a lot of money by vibe coding this. How hard could it be? Let's see how long it takes me. And when you spend a week on something that should have taken you a few months or 6 months or a year, and you're like, I think we're good now. Even if you have to do maintenance and you now have that like cost of ownership, I think I would take the cost of ownership, at least right now. Maybe mark my words. Come back to me in a year after I've been using my own software for a year. And I'm just like, dude, that was the most masochistic thing I've ever done. Don't let me ever do that again. But
well
as
I
of
found that with
now,
OpenClaw actually like I set it up and then I'm like, okay, great. So I'm not going to give it my passwords. I'm not going to give it my credit card number. So what am I going to do with this thing exactly? Right? So that's a big question mark because I don't trust it enough. And so that's herein lies the conundrum. And so, but I think it is about yeah, who knows? We might be living a life of regret at some point, right? Or just avoiding certain risky behavior. One thing I want to ask you, is so right now, you're starting to see AI pop stars on Spotify,
yeah.
YouTube, lots of AI generated content, making a lot of money right now, and AI influencers and so forth.
God, you want to know the wildest one?
What's
Last
that?
2 weeks ago when I was in Amsterdam, we had a meetup and the guy came to the meetup and then somebody introduced me and we got talking and he's like, "Yeah, I own a crypto betting exchange or like gambling website, right?" And so I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting. Cool." And then he goes, "But I also just started a OnlyFans with only AI avatars." And I'm like,
Okay.
"Dude, first of all, you're just all in on the heathenistic shit, huh?
Yeah,
Like, let's get, what else are you doing? But second of all, that's nuts." And he's like, "Yeah, people love it."
I'm sure they do.
I'm sure they fucking
I'm
do.
sure they do. Well, I mean, it's evidenced by the popularity of these things.
Yeah.
What? But you have a big community. Have obviously, you do a lot of content creation and so forth. I do too. I don't have the size of your community. We both run communities. We both, have a profile. Like, what do you think AI does to people like us?
As of now, I personally am not spending so much time consuming AI generated content.
Right.
I do know that a lot of folks are consuming it without realizing that it's AI. So who knows? Maybe later it becomes something where you are consuming it without even knowing it. I will kind of point to the only other data point, which is You know how Notebook LM got really popular for a while?
Yeah.
How many of the people that were losing their minds over Notebook LM are actually consuming Notebook LM generated content as much as they're consuming like human based content? I would love to know that as a
Sure,
study, but
I don't know, yeah.
I get the feeling that it's much less Notebook LM content versus human content that most folks are consuming, if at all. Like it probably dropped off a cliff after the fad died out. Because
Yeah.
for me, like I listened to a few of them and I was like, "Whoa, this is really cool. This is really good." And then I went back to listening to my favorite podcast feeds.
Mhm.
Didn't think about like, "Oh, now I'm gonna add this to my rotation," right?
Yeah, there was definitely that point where, people were, playing with it. I think it only lasted a couple weeks, or at least in my, circle of friends, right? And it was sort of like, "Oh, podcasting's doomed,"
Yeah.
right?
Look at we're
I mean,
still
last
here.
time I checked Joe Rogan and, still doing pretty well. Oh, yeah, I mean, it makes content generation, I would say I think it makes the process potentially, streamlined in some sense, right? Like, I'm able to, uh yeah, I've been experimenting with something in Claude, which is like a kind of a content repurposer. At least if I write an article, it'll, like, give me some ideas. Okay, so this could be a video, this could be a social media post, this could turn into another post here. But I also don't like the fact that it will, like, I still want to write it. Maybe I'm just like a boomer that way, but I feel like I need to understand what it is I'm giving to my audience, because if I just let it could be easy just to let it all post, right? And just come up with some AI generated video and podcast
Which
and
a lot of people
article.
do.
They do that, right? But
But it sucks, and I love that you call it out online. I think it's become one of my most fun things to do is when you you will do those cheeky comments with that.
right.
Remember when LinkedIn would encourage you to use their AI generated content? That was
Oh, the little one, like, "Interesting, great
yeah,
take," or whatever. Yeah. No, I just have this one that I have in my, Apple Notes that's just a canned response, like, "Great perspective," and just a bunch of really generic stuff like, "This is a story that people seem to be missing right now," and it just goes on. And the thing is you can apply it to almost any situation, and it kinda works,
and
right? Like, but
I've
people are just like,
noticed you've been doing it, and I gotta applaud you for it because
"Oh,
it makes
thank
me
you."
laugh every time.
It's fun. I mean, I yeah, it is fun. I just trolled, Jordan Degani the other day, from, Mother Duck, but he had a good point too, where he said, yeah, when people write PRs or documentation, they have to, hopefully write it by hand, and I think that forces thinking, and that's the one thing I don't wanna cheat myself out of, or my audience, because I feel like, people are paying me for my ideas and perspective, and if I just outsource that to the LLM, I could certainly do that, and it would work for a while, but then say I have to go give a talk on it or give a podcast or just, like, think about it, then you have none of those cycles that I've gone through, right? So I recently got a Remarkable tablet. This episode is brought to you by Remarkable. Just kidding.
It is.
Kidding, no, I'm just kidding. But
Wait,
I did
you keep
but
tricking me, Joe.
I know, I keep talking with you. We're podcasters, right? But
Don't be thrown
but
hooked on phonics.
no, it wasn't. It was just a fake one, but no, but I got one the other day because I was like, I've been noodling on this notion of AI speed and human speed.
Mm,
And this is something that I've been really appreciating, where the AI can just operate at a clock speed and a level of output that we're just never going to match, no matter how hard we try. But I've been coming back to the things that I think make me really good, and that's the ability to, stew an idea for a long time, think it through, and I think come up with permutations of an idea and different combinations that's just, the AI probably wouldn't do because it doesn't have this up here. And just operating at the speed that I'm comfortable working at, and so I've found myself going back to this writing a lot by hand, and that's human speed of thought, and so but so that's how I've been thinking through content a lot more deeply in that way, and I think it's coming up. It's allowing me to come up with better ideas. Obviously, bounce things off the AI. Claude's freaking amazing, but it also, it'll say things, and you're just like, that doesn't seem quite. I don't know.
yeah,
It's not me. It's not Demetrios, right? So
yeah. And you
yeah,
gotta dig a little bit deeper and realize, "Why do I not jive with that?"
yeah,
And I agree with you wholeheartedly on every piece of that because when I come up with thesis or when I have original thoughts, it's usually after stewing on something for a while and needing to express it through writing. Or if I have to give a talk, I want to make sure that talk is highly valuable. And so I'll spend a lot of cycles on it and I'll write it out and then I'll go back and forth and then I'll think about it. I'll let it sit there for a day and then come back to it. And that type of stuff with a prompt, I have not been able to figure out how to create those deep insights from
Yeah.
just the prompt where I can now have, oh, cool, long podcast workflow that goes from long podcast to great LinkedIn post, you know? And I've tried because there are cool ideas that get shared. There's good stuff, but it's not as easy as take transcript from podcast and then magically there's some insight that I can post on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it is hard. Like, I definitely use a transcript to help with, like, title generation and description. I think that's because there's but you always wanna what the way I use it is, okay, like, what's gonna also appeal to the algorithm, right? Because you have another set of consumers. It's not just the people who consume your stuff, but also the algorithm that will surface the material in the first place, and that has to be dialed. And unfortunately, the AI responses, they do understand what the algo wants.
Yeah.
So if you try and put some unhinged thing in there, I mean, it satisfies you, but it's not going to appease the algo, and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah. If it's too niche and you're like, this is hilarious, but like you and two other people actually understand the joke, it doesn't
Right.
work. I've definitely tried that.
And then what happened?
Nobody watched the damn video. That's what happened because the algo didn't show it to anybody. But I thought it was hilarious. You know, it's like the title is, oh, this is magical.
I know what you mean though, because it's this kind of kitschy inside joke, but it's also so I think for the audience too, what's changed in YouTube especially is it's not so views are not so much dependent on follower count anymore. It's how much engagement the video independently gets. So all of some videos that get a few hundred um views, and then some others that will have close to 100,000 views, and that's just how it is.
Dude, it is so wild. And it is so, I haven't cracked the nut. I haven't been able to figure out like why, but I do use all of the tools. And one of them is vidIQ.
Oh, interesting.
Episode
It's
is
brought to you by vidIQ. We're making a wish list of all of our sponsors here. vidIQ, I don't think I've used that one.
but there was something I wanted to say something around what you were saying in the beginning with just how fast you can, how I've seen folks on YouTube or TikTok or wherever say, hey, look at this content generation pipeline that I've created. And I've also seen marketing agencies come about and they're there to help you just churn out a ton of content, right? But I often think about that. What is it? The Doorman Paradox. Have you heard that one?
I don't
Where
think so.
uh, some consultancy firm was,
Yeah.
and so they fired all the door people. And next thing you know, there's these second and third order consequences that start happening, and the hotel stops feeling so luxurious because the door person was doing a lot more than just keeping the door open for people when they would walk in
Right.
and out. They were making sure that there was no vagrants hanging out on the front of the hotel entrance and cleaning it, keeping it clean. They were also greeting people as they walked in. Maybe they were helping folks with their bags. And all of these things you now no longer have. And so it gives you this feeling when you go to a hotel that, it's not as nice of a hotel. And I equate that to what are these second and third order consequences of all of this content generation pipelines where, yeah, you can, at the speed of an agent, churn out tons of content. But what does that do? What's that end user experience?
Yeah.
People that are the end users, do they feel like they just got dumber for reading your stuff, or did they
I mean,
find
that's
it?
that's the intention. Yes.
doing the best I can to make that happen? Or is it like they find it insightful and they're looking at you as someone who is okay, you come to the Substack or social media or your podcast with original ideas that aren't just created from a content generation pipeline.
No, it's something I mean, it's something I think about a lot, like, how much could I streamline in the process? And there's certainly things like I'm looking at Riverside right now, and it's, the AI editing in it is pretty good. It's pretty good, right? And it can make clips that are pretty good. I think that saves me time, right? But the content's already there. You're just, like, parsing it apart now, but it's the creation of the content itself. If I were to go and make something that was, just rapid fire AI content, I would put it under a different name, and I wouldn't let anyone know I'm doing it until it's, like, really successful. Then I'd be like, "Yeah, I mean, I made, like, $1 trillion off this thing, and it's great."
If it gets there, right?
If it gets it, but it won't. Or
Yeah.
might, but who knows? It actually might.
Who knows? That's the thing. Like,
Yeah,
who knows? I hope it doesn't, but shit, man, what do we know?
I don't know. But I think the things that you're doing though, like conferences and community, like that's I think gonna be the enduring thing where that brings people back to that human people want content and I think they want experiences that are at human speed as well.
Yeah.
If you can imagine a conference that operated at AI speed, well, I don't even know what that would look like. It would just be insane.
Seizure.
But yeah, nobody would like it either. Like, oh, I got yeah, I bled through my eyes. It was great.
Yeah.
But your conference is really about like those special moments that people can look at, like you on the ukulele. Like that's serendipity. That's not planned. That just sort of happened.
Yeah.
I think that's what people are gonna remember. But
Dude, can
yeah,
we change gears real fast? I
yeah,
remembered what I originally
yeah,
texted
yeah.
you about, and you
Oh
were
yeah,
like,
we did.
"Oh,
Yeah,
man, let's do a podcast on this."
yeah. Let's talk about that. We got a few minutes. Yeah.
Because I just am so shocked. I don't like, does this happen to you where someone will come to you and say, "Hey, Joe, we're really excited to do something with your community. We just raised our newest round or we just launched our newest product and it really would be beneficial for your community. And so we'd love to figure out ways to work together." And it's like, all right, sweet. And I think you might be in a different place because you don't take any sponsorship, right? So there's,
I do, but I can walk you through how I do it.
all right. So tell me.
I talk speaking of Doorman, right? So I now for me to even like look at your product, and I have to believe in the product, but that comes at a cost too, because otherwise I'd be looking at products all day. So like, there's a minimum fee you'd have to pay for me to even like look at your product, give it feedback, and then I might think about sponsoring. You might think about giving you sponsorship because that um, at least gives me a chance to check out the product. It at least shows that you're serious about engaging. And then it's also okay. So this sponsorship would come in the form of ads, probably on my newsletter or podcast, but I keep that in the community stuff separate. So so I do lunch and learns with companies, but they don't pay me to do that. They're just like, I invite them, and so that's how I handle it. Like anything, like, talking to the crowd, I feel like that's, I keep that hands off. But I think, I'm not opposed to, sponsorships. I just feel like I found a way that works for me where I can maintain my credibility and sanity. Like I've at least tried your product out, tested it, I believe in it, and then I can put it in front of people,
Yeah.
right? But that model is still evolving. But how do you handle this?
Well, what we do is because I don't know if you know this, but venues in San Francisco are not cheap.
Yeah. So I've heard.
So we have like a sales team that will go out and get sponsors for the event. I don't do anything in the Slack channel. That's like sacred space. And if anybody comes in there pushing their products, I just delete and ban very
Yep.
quickly.
Same.
I've
Yep.
gotten I've gotten very ruthless about that because a great way to ruin a community is to just have it devolve into only self promo and
Yeah.
people talking about themselves. But what grinds my gears is when folks come and they're like, "Hey, we got this product and you should check it out and it's going to be great for the community." And then I say, okay, cool. Well, here's the different sponsorship options. If you want to do something on a podcast, or if you want to do something in our newsletter, or if you want to sponsor our event, here's what you're looking at. And they go, oh no, we either there's kind of like one of two. It's either we just wanted to do a small engagement and maybe we could do it for free. You're like, huh? Like, dude, I got a 2-year-old. She's still in diapers. I'm trying to potty train her, but diapers are expensive, bro. Like, give me a break. I need to pay for them diapers, first of all. And then the other side that I'll usually hear if somebody doesn't want to pay is they'll say, but it's open source. Yeah, I that's great that it's open source, but is there a company behind that open source
Yeah,
product?
right.
And what kills me is, and I think when I was texting getting your consolation with you that spurred the chain of events of this podcast, is that companies that have done this to me, I don't need to name any names, but they've raised over like $100 million.
That's bananas.
And they're coming to me like, "Oh no, we don't want to pay for to sponsor the meetup. We just want our name and logo everywhere, and you guys bring all the people and you do everything and you pay for the venue and food and whatever, but we'll just, be there because we're such a strong brand." And I'm like, "Well, again, that may or may not be true. That's a little bit pretentious in my book."
Yeah. I evaluate those on a case by case basis. I think if there's a mutual benefit, if it's a company that has a halo effect where it's like, okay, I'll be willing to take one for the team for this one, maybe. It could be
Wow.
worth it. Like, if it's yeah, I won't name names. If it's a company that has, a lot of cachet and so forth, and I'm like, okay, I think there's probably some benefit, here. But that's an extremely rare case,
Yeah.
right? Because most people don't have that kind of cachet.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
there's
they
certain
think
people I
they
work
do.
they
That's
think
the
they
problem.
do, but
Everybody
they
thinks they do.
but that's earned, right? It's one of those things where like you kind of know it when you see it. Like, there's certain people I work with for free, in the industry just because they're like, they have a name and they're legends, and like that's, I would feel almost bad charging them money, right? And it's just like one of those things where, so I evaluate on a case by case basis for sure, but it is, yeah, I think there tends to be, I would call it abusive in that sense where people want a lot for nothing and they expect that because they're them and you're you, that obviously this is a great fit and you should do a bunch of shit for free. I find it offensive.
Yeah.
And I am the kind of guy I'd have zero problem telling the person I find your request pretty offensive. So
Nice. Do you?
yeah, I'm like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's, the only thing that matters to me is, maintaining and growing reputation. And if I have to, um, be assertive about that, then I guess that's how it is. But, I've just learned you can't let people, um, take advantage of your reputation. Because if you do it for one person and there's no mutual benefit to you and your community, I need to add the community bit to it too. Then it's like, then that begins that process of that reputation degrading,
Yep.
and you can't get that back, unfortunately. You can always make more money. I've never found that to be like, there's never been like a lack of opportunity for me to make money in this world. But I think the chances to grow or ruin your reputation or present themselves on a daily basis to you, and you can take advantage of either one. You could say, let's YOLO this and let me just like ruin my reputation to shreds, like in the next 5 minutes. Let's do that. But would you do that? Right? Of course you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? But people do this all the time. And it may not be ripped to shreds in 5 minutes, but over the course of, 5 months or 5 years, certainly. And then what do you have left after that? I've seen friends who, are influencers or have, do marketing for companies. And it's like they've taken the shortcut because the money was there,
Yeah.
in the immediate term. But what that meant for them long term is their reputation was toast. And once that's there, you can't get it back. And the world's such a small place from it's like, so I have no problem telling people to go fuck off if like they if they're coming at me in a very, I would say, self-serving and not a mutually beneficial place where it's all about them. I'm like, fine, there's plenty of other people you can go work with, but I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Not that kind of girl.
Yeah.
So
Let me give you some names of people that I think you might have success with.
right, they're like people I don't like.
Yeah, exactly. And just DDoS them with a bunch of sponsors that are there, fake sponsors willing to waste their time.
No. But
That's
then it was a good text, and yeah, totally. I knew there was like, what was that thing we are going to talk about? And I was scrolling through my phone, and that's when we hit record. I'm like, never mind, we'll probably get to it. But,
I remembered. I never gonna let go of that grudge. Those they're now on my blacklist. But do they if they come back to you, do you work with them or do you just like X them out and say like, yeah, it's better if I never talk to those folks again?
yeah, the thing with companies though is, unless it's a founder talking to you, I mean, people come and go from jobs all the time.
Yeah.
So I always try and maintain at least like some sense of decorum. I mean, I might tell you to go fuck off today, but that doesn't mean we can't be friends tomorrow. It just means under the circumstances in which you came to me, it was just like, what do this is not, this is all about you, right? And this is so, but it depends. There are definitely certain people that I have 86 for sure, and would never even consider talking to again. No, of course not.
I
And it's just
I
like
totally do too. That's so funny. I'm
perfect.
glad to hear that. But yeah, I even if they come, some of them have come back and been like, "Hey, we just raised a new round. We're willing to sponsor like big time." And then it's like, "No, you guys lost that opportunity."
Yeah. I mean, you have your reputation to uphold, Demetrios. You worked your ass off to get to where you are with plenty of opportunity costs, by the way. Like you could have been doing probably something else, making billions off crypto and,
Yeah,
OnlyFans AI
the
models and
AI
stuff.
OnlyFans. What
Yeah.
did I miss out?
But, you skipped out on that because you're probably a half decent person who's not a sleazeball.
Well,
And,
great.
this is the path you chose, but it's a path that you built. You built this thing from nothing. I remember when you built this. It was nothing.
Yeah, it was me, you, and a few others in a random Slack workspace.
Yeah, that was it. Like, I remember you quit your job or you I think yeah, something happened at your job. You started them yeah, you lost your job during COVID, I think, right? And this is, and then it was the kid in diapers. It was more like you just found out you were having a kid actually, and it's like,
Yeah,
"Shit, I guess I better figure that out." But now you have, in dog years, I guess, a fully grown, adult, or, community, but the thing is, like, this is where it matters, I would say. You can't I mean, I think it matters more in that sense where you can't take shortcuts anymore. It's like if you're going to build something that's enduring, because it's not just the community; it's your name on it. And
yeah,
so I've just seen people blow their names up, and it's like you can't get that back. It's really hard. No, yeah, and even if you try and traverse industries, like say you become like a landscaper or something, it's like, well, somebody like, yeah, but Demetrios is kind of a douchebag, actually.
yeah.
Like, or he's a
Thank
great
you.
guy, whichever, depending on what path you took. So, I know that I can be a polarizing figure in the industry for sure because I think that I do speak my mind very openly because I'm not really beholden to anyone who's gonna, any company is gonna fire me, for example. So it's like
Isn't
I
that
can say
nice?
things. It is nice. It's a bit of responsibility, I would say, right? You can't just go blurt like random shit all the time, like Andrew Tate's awesome. That's gonna sound so he's gonna take that sound clip and just use it. But you can't just say just unhinged shit like, let's go get Greenland. But you know what I mean? But also you can say things that I think a lot of people want to say that they can't for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, yeah. I noticed that also, that you can be that voice, and then folks resonate with it more because you are putting words to something that people are feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, you do this, right? And it's like, I think that's why you have a community that because you got that cool vibe, but it's also I think you just have a sense of stewardship about the community and about the space too. But I think you're in a position where you can determine where the conversations go to some extent too, and even in a fast moving industry, and that's a position of power, like it or not. But with great power comes great responsibility. So it means also to the text that we were talking about, it's like you can't spend your time. I mean, there's a lot of bozos out there, no matter what industry you're in, right? But when there's a lot of money, you're going to attract a lot of bozos.
Yeah,
And the thing is, you got to keep the bozos to a minimum. You're gonna encounter them, you're gonna work with them, but it's like the fewer you can interact with, and especially take money, because when you take money from a bozo, now you owe them something.
yep.
That
Such
sucks.
a good
And you
point.
kind of in the back of your head, you're like, what the fuck did this do?
Yeah, I just degraded myself. Like, what did I stoop to? It's a whole new low, and I've definitely done it before. And then later, you're like, man, this is not what I wanted to be doing. So,
Especially, you got enough stress in your life.
yeah,
Why have that in the back of your head? So anyway, that's my take on that conversation. But I think it's one that we needed to have in public though, because I think for the listeners, it is inside baseball into what people who like Demetrios and I, we do get hit up on a daily basis by people with money who want something. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it works great.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not a fit. I don't know.
Sometimes they have money, they just don't wanna give it to us. They wanna make us have to work for it harder, apparently. It's like, it just blows my mind because the amount of times I've been on calls and I'm looking at the crunch base for the company that I'm talking to, and the number of zeros that they have raised, just like my eyes can't come.
Yeah.
It's good that
No,
we
it's
gotta
good.
in
And
the
be
US.
thankful you're in this position. I mean, I think for every one of those companies that you're mentioning that are, want a bunch of stuff for free, there's a lot of upstanding companies that just want to do the right thing too. I mean, there's good people in this world. I work with, a lot of the biggest companies in the data space, and like they're great to work with and I love them. And, the people there who I work with, if they go to another job, I know we'll have another relationship, but that's how I kind of look at it. But, if you're on the flip side, if you're that person who just, is kind of an asshole, I suppose, ask for a bunch of shit for free and, don't, then I'm kind of like, you'll go to another job, at some point,
Yeah.
and it's probably not going to be a fit. Maybe you have somebody else in your organization I can work with, right? But I think it's just in a lot of cases, it's very rarely have I seen it being an organizational issue though, where it's like, from the top to the bottom, people are like that, right? It's more just that's just how that person you're talking to is probably wired. And,
Yeah,
the
it's
other's
so
like,
weird because it's not their money.
it's not the money at all. But it's also like it's part of the art of the deal, right? You always
Yeah.
want to feel like you're getting one over on somebody,
Yeah, that's
right?
true, like, you feel like you're getting a deal, but you do make a great point, and again, I don't there's more people that I've interacted with that are amazing than there are these ones. I guess it's more recency bias and the squeaky wheel type
Yeah,
thing that when you get these duds, those are what stick with you. But if I were to count it out in my head, as you were saying that, 98% of the folks that I talk to are
yeah,
awesome and incredible, and it's only the the very few that then I am like, "What the hell was that?" Like, the audacity.
it happens.
Yeah.
It happens. Well, Demetrios, it's great chatting with you. Good luck on your conference.
Are we gonna
Should be fun.
Yeah, cool. Should we end on a lighter note? I feel like I brought it
Let's
down.
end on a lighter note, yeah, because otherwise I'm just gonna be like, getting
Yeah,
on my next call and be like, "Yo, man, like people suck."
yeah, it evolved into me just complaining about these unknown folks who are trying to hoodwink us.
It's the Illuminati.
Yeah.
It's all the people in the Epstein files.
It is, but I will come back to the idea that I had at the beginning, and I wanted to make the point of and around the agents and the chat, and how right now we're in this chat era of agents type of thing when folks are coming and they're saying, "Oh, let's put out a chatbot to help users and they're going to like that more." I have been talking to folks, and I would love to hear more or see more data on this. So next year, when you do a survey, maybe what ROI, any like, are these chatbots actually working? Is really my big question because you'll hear and you'll see people try and put them there, but then are they
Yeah,
creating ROI? I don't know.
that's a good point. I don't know either. I think we'll find out soon, right? I think it's kind of the broader narrative of the business. Like, what is the ROI of all this stuff right now? The studies are actually showing it's not bearing out at all, but that's also like kind of I think the curve of adoption where we are right now is the maturity of it. Like,
Yeah.
you got to imagine you're trying to shoehorn in this great technology into companies and organizations that are probably not equipped for it, to be frank,
Yeah.
right? And just they need a lot of tuning on their own. And so, that was my survey revealed was it was, 83%, 82%, whatever the respondents were using AI coding tools. Less than 10% were doing anything meaningful with AI in their companies,
Yeah.
right? That's
Exactly.
a huge disconnect. And then you couple onto it that the biggest issues people were finding had nothing to do with technology. It was lack of leadership direction, piles of technical debt, which is sort of tech, but that's a leadership issue in my opinion. And it's just like, you know, organizational issues. I think that's like, I think to your point, the reason I'd be curious about the data too. Maybe next year everyone's just like finding massive success with chatbots and agents in their organizations just unanimously. Like if the switch was flipped and every company in the world is just seeing like phenomenal results. I doubt it, but who knows? Maybe the data will bear this out, right?
Yeah,
And so
it comes back to the idea of the UX and just the chatbot not being the right user experience, or the way that we are meant to interact with our devices. So,
it's got to wear meta glasses. That's
yeah,
really what will solve it.
or the
Just
pin.
the pin.
Let's see if
Yeah,
that pin takes off. That'll be
the Apple pin. Well, if you
yeah,
figure like 2007 was the birth of the iPhone. That's almost 20 years ago. We had nothing since then,
yeah,
right? What glasses? It looks like Google Glass and Ray Bans. Like, okay,
yeah, that's the best we got?
yeah, I can't wear those. I feel like a weirdo wearing those in like restrooms and stuff. I'm
Yeah.
kidding, but it's just yeah, I don't know. But anyway, man, well, good luck and welcome back to America when you get here in a bit, and
Thanks, dude.
hope you enjoy SF. So yeah, bro.
Appreciate this.
Yes, have a good one.